Welcome along, and this is the top 10 units in Medieval version 2, because I did a top 10 list a month or two ago, but we have had a brand new DLC with all the Middle Eastern and Asian armies, swords and scimitars, and so I've decided to bring out a new top 10. I'm going to include a few units from the new DLCs. This is not meant to be definitive. I've left out some units. It's impossible to include everything in the top 10, and it's for fun as well. So it's really just to get us thinking about the kind of units that might be advantageous to use on the battlefield. I have in my last list, I included things like the highly superior, fully armored dismounted knights. They were number 1. So if you do want some kind of comprehensive, more definitive list, then maybe have a look at my original list. I'm doing some self-promotion here. Have a look at my original video and then use that in conjunction with this one, and then you'll get maybe a good overview of some of the best units in Medieval. And what am I going to start with? Wow, look at all these wonderful units. I am going to surprise you all. I'm going to go for Irregular Foot. Can you believe it? This is the Muslim type, same unit in the European armies, Irregular Foot. I just think for the price, 30, they are really good as support units, bulking out your infantry a bit. So in this army, I think I brought about 20 units, which is a great number for infantry, with all these great veteran spear units, which I'm also going to talk about later on. So, as support with some great units around them and some, your standard Muslim spear, which are fine. They can do a really good job. Maneuverable, put them on the flanks, they can really help you out. And what also surprised me, and I've mentioned this before in a few other videos, is how well they do against cavalry. This unit has light spear. So, when I was doing some tests and what I've seen on the battlefield, against Bedu light horse, Bedu cavalry, unprotected lancers, they've got a slight advantage because of this 100 POA light spear that they have. You go all the way up to Byzantine lancers, which are above average armored lancers, and it's around even. It's around even on impact for these units, which is absolutely fantastic. At number 9 on my list, it's going to be, would you believe it, Slingers? What? Actually, it could be either, really. I haven't decided. Depends, I guess, on the ground, how you're playing, what you want to do. I'm going to put them together. Slingers and light javelin men. For me, I think a great price. In Medieval, a lot of the time you don't get the option like you do in Ancients to take out the cheaper end skirmishers. I really like saving money, points. So if I can save 6 per unit on my skirmishers, I'm really happy. So I think they deserve to be in the top 10. They can do a lot of damage, if you mass them up, concentrate your fire, they can disrupt good units, and then that allows your infantry to go in, and you've got a higher percentage chance of winning. They're often overlooked. Some players don't use them properly, or they get wiped out quickly, charged by cav, and etc. But if you can protect them, they can do so many things. They can cover your infantry.
They can focus fire. They can claim rough grounds. Because remember, they can charge units. Even these lowly 24-point skirmishers. If a unit's on rough ground, they can go in. And I have actually, it's not happened much. But when I think back, one of my league games, I think I disrupted some heavy infantry with a charge, a flank charge, with some cheap skirmishers. So, you know, they and in woods, hard to dislodge from woods, rough ground. So they're multi-purpose really, and you can do a lot with them. Slingers obviously have got the range, and javelin men I think are better against maybe cavalry, and I think they're better against elephants. So you know, they work well together really. And yeah, I think at 24 it's a great price. I remember I did a top 10 of the worst units, and I think there's the light crossbowmen were there in my top 10 of worst units, and that was because their price. They were 36, 12 points more than these units, and yet they're still skirmishers. So you really do get a lot of bang for your buck. That would be what I would say with these guys.
At number 8, I've got the light horse archers. I think they do a great job for the price. The 28. You've got the Muslim light horses, or just the regular light horse archers. Let's do a little zoom. They look great, don't they, in there with their little steeds. Just maneuverable. They've got the bow. They can do a lot of damage to cavalry, especially with these newer armies that tend to have more bow. You know, I've got I think 4 of the javelin horse here, and some of the Turkmen light horse, which is kind of the one step up from the light horse archers. So it's the same story. When they're used in conjunction with other light horse, they can be very effective. So at 28, I've just got to include them. They are really, really cost effective. Maybe not the absolute best unit you could bring, but in terms of using them on the battlefield in the early stages of the battle, you know, to try to disrupt enemy units, harass enemy cavalry, support your main cavalry, they do an essential job, and just really, really good value for money. You're going to see more bow, and with the new DLC, we've got a lot of mixed bow units and the infantry, and we've got a lot more horse archers. So to hold your own, you're just going to need some of these kind of units. So I think they are worthy, and I always try and get the cheaper units. So if I'm looking for bow, what are the cheapest units? And these, and not all lists have them, and it's unfortunate you can only take one. So you list that where you can take 4, 5, 6, whatever. That I think is ideal. There's a few I've seen that you can take 2. So yeah, that's good. But you know, in this list, I've got javelin horse. I can take 8 more, and I've also got the Turkmen light horse. And so, used with these units, I think they can be a great addition to your army, and worthy. They are worthy inclusion on my list at number 8. At number 7, yes, I've managed
to squeeze in the dismounted knights. Now, if you followed my videos and you saw the first list I did, I put the fully armored dismounted knights that are in the German lists. They came at number 1 in my previous list. I haven't included them this time. I've wanted to add. There's so many units now in the game, and it's good to take into account new units, and it's all for fun as well. It's not the absolute definitive list, but what I have done is I have decided to include the early version of the dismounted knights. They're at 69. The other ones, fully armored ones, are 78. Now, I did, just for your information, I took out, this is the early papal list with Norman allies. I took out this list and I did quite well in the league in High Middle Ages. So it's a decent army, got all the kind of units you want, fair amount of defensive spear, raw spear, which I love, crossbowmen, good amount, and then some knights to back you up, and dismounted knights. You got the early version there, but some players prefer them because they're more maneuverable. So into the mix comes up to 4 dismounted knights. Generally I took around 2 or 3. There's also 2 versions, so that's nice to look at as well. You've got the heavy weapon version, and you've got the spear version. So what's the difference? Well, basically, as an all-rounder, the spear are better. You get your 100 POA plus your armor and your quality. They're better against cavalry, better against swordsmen. So generally speaking, I'd always take spearmen over heavy weapon. But saying that, this unit is still excellent, and the heavy weapon is good against armor, so that's quite nice to go up against armored units. The heavy weapon comes into its own, but overall spearmen are just better. But these units at 69, fully armored ones are 78, so you're saving 9 there per unit, and they're still good. I mean, there's superior quality and they're armored. So as I've said before, there's not a lot of kind of mid-tier units, and not even that much top-end infantry units on the battlefield. A lot of armies have just got spearmen, armored spearmen, and that's about the best they can field. Okay, some of these Muslim armies, they've got Dailami and they've got veteran spear, but that's particular to those armies, and even those units are just not as good as these. You're going to have advantage against the veteran spear, and after impact and in melee, you've got a great advantage against the Dailami. So they're going to be almost anything most of the time on the battlefield. So for 69, they are a great buy. At number six, the Camel Lancers, and I had them in my original top 10, and they've made it again. I just think that they are fantastic. They look great. They are very, very cost effective. 46. They've got advantages against almost all cavalry, up to knights, and even against knights they'll probably still hold for quite a while. Because this disordering factor, when you look at it, when you open up your combat log and you look at it, it roughly works out about a plus 70 POA advantage. And that's after factoring in that they're lancers. So they are fearsome mounted troops. Fearsome. Can beat anything, almost anything that they face.
You know, your medium lancers, armored lancers, Muslim cav, your above average cavalry that just has the light spear. Well, you know, basically almost anything up to, once you start getting to knights, knightly lancers, yeah, and maybe they're still going to do pretty well against the armored Muslim lancers because of the disordering factor. So they are an absolute great buy. I would definitely take them. And in this kind of list, you can take twos. They're just really hard against the infantry, as I've mentioned before. Because they're lancers, they keep bouncing as well. So they're really good for locking down infantry. When they try and charge, then they're a big disadvantage because these guys are lancers. Worthy inclusion at number 6.
Coming in at number 5, I'm going to go with one of the kind of newer units, the Pavesias and Crossbowmen. This is kind of, for me, a symbol of the evolution of the game. Starting to move away from spear, and dismounted knights and skirmishers, and we're getting more kind of unique units, hybrid units, and this is a great example. They're mixed crossbow 66%, defensive spear 34%, and swordsman 33%. So a real mix. They could be, let's see how the armies play out, but they could be a really, really good addition to the game and to your army. You get your armor. They got some armor. They look wonderful. I mean, look at these shields. They're fantastic, don't they? Compared to your standard kind of spearmen. Defensive spear look really pretty poor compared to these guys. But are they going to perform as well as they look? This is the big question, but I'm going to put them about 5 on my list. I think they've got potential if you can secure higher ground, if you can put them onto rough ground, hold a flank, hold a part of the line, mass your fire. Crossbowmen I love. On my first list I think crossbowmen are actually about number 5. So these are sort of the upgraded crossbowmen because they've got some armor and they've got some defensive spear as well compared to swordsmen. So they're a bit better than crossbowmen, and I really love crossbowmen. So, the price is only 2 more. Crossbowmen 39 and these 41. So it's a pretty good price, I'd say. Pretty good value for money. Obviously, against spearmen in melee, they're going to be at a disadvantage. But you've got like 2 chances to get some good volleys off against spearmen. And remember as well, defensive spear, offensive spear, they're only protected. So you can do a fair bit of damage. I think it's around 6 to 18 on your first volley, and then when you're right in front of them, it's about 14 to 40, I think it is, roughly. So you could do a fair bit of damage, and if you've got a few of them together firing at one unit, it's highly likely you're going to disrupt one of these units. So I think they could be really good. They could be really good. Let's see how they perform. There's also the Scutatoi. In some lists, they're a little bit better than this. I think they've got a little bit more armor. So they're also a really good unit, and I don't think they're that much more. A few points more. So I can include them with these as well. They're worth. Is it 44 they cost? They're worth it as well. At number 4, I'm going to include some of my favourite units. I'm going to lump them together. Light Lancers. There's a few options, variations, different kinds you can take. The cheapest, something like the Bedu Light Horse, 28. Fantastic. These are just great value for money. You get the POA advantage for being Lancers, and yet you're only paying 28, only 4 more than Javelin Horse. What more could you ask for? Excellent value for money, and even going up to the Bedu Cav, which is protected versus unprotected, but you don't really get, any sort of protection or armor. Doesn't give you that much extra in POA, and doesn't affect impact. So really the cheapest ones are probably best value, but even Lancers around 34, even 36, 38. I think there's a few options, versions above average, protected Lancers and so on. All of these kind of units are really good value for money, very mobile, cheap, great POA on impact. So yeah, I think I'm happy putting them down at number 4. And at 3rd on my list of this top 10, the Veteran Dailami Foot. Awesome unit. This army's just appeared in Medieval. Let's see how they do. But when you've got an army of all impact foot, that's going to be pretty tough to play against. These guys, really good value for money. 57. Not only do you get the 200 POA on impact, but you get 50 extra because of their quality. So against your standard defensive spear, you're up 150 on impact, which is a lot. It means you can disrupt units fairly frequently. You've got a good chance of doing so, and then you've got a clear advantage. And even if you don't disrupt on impact against your average spear, you're kind of evens, and then you're just going to have an advantage with the cohesion checks because you're superior quality. So you're going to have, in a sense, you're going to have an advantage against your average heavy foot in melee. So they are great, really great units. Okay, they're not spear. Okay, medium foot. But because of their quality and the large advantage on impact, they, I think, justifiably come in at number 3. At number 2, would you believe it? At number 2, I'm going to put the Turkoman Cav. I mean, they're not at number 2, you're saying, but they're not that impressive on their own, are they? They cost 36. Average protected bow. Why am I putting them at number 2? Well, I think you've got to factor in the price, what they can do at that price, and also in this army, this is a Crusader army, you don't get so many, but in most armies you get 6, 9 even, and then they're an absolute nightmare to play against. If you're playing against 5, 6, 7 of them, essentially like the Mongol Cav, they'll just do a great job against cavalry and any infantry that's not armored, and there's a lot of units like that. With crossbowmen are protected, defensive spear protected, archers are unprotected. The bowmen. There's a lot of units to fire at. So I think when you maximize their firepower, you consider their cost. They're going to change the way we play because you can bring a lot of them in many armies, and some of those European armies only have a couple of knights, some sergeants, some javelin horse, and that's about it. So when you've got a mass of these mounted bow, it's just it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So I think they deserve to be number 2 in terms of the problems they can cause armies.
At number one, here they are. The veteran Muslim Spearmen. The veteran Muslim Spearmen. Now, let's see how they do. The new armies from the brand new DLC. Their cost has just gone up. I didn't include them in my original list, because I couldn't fit everything in, and I forgot about them, and a few players mentioned them. So, veteran Muslim Spearmen. There are now 57. I think there were about 51 before, something like that. And so they've gone up around 6. But they're still fantastic. And there's a few reasons for that. In this game, you tend to get a lot of the rather generic standard spearmen, defensive spear. Your armored kind costs 42. And they don't give you much more of an advantage. POA. There's the offensive armored spearmen. You don't see them a lot. They're at 48, overpriced. And then there's a big jump up. You've got your dismounted knights. The better ones in the German lists at 78, and the early dismounted knights at 69 in some of the Italian lists, like the Papal list. And then, you don't have what I call mid-tier infantry in the 50s. How many infantry units are in the 50s in terms of cost? Not that many. Yes, you've got some of the veteran Dailami, which we've already talked about. But there just isn't that many. And, you can take 5 in a lot of lists, that when you've got access to them, that's around the number. Because a lot of armies, I've covered when I've been doing my army analysis videos, something like the Crusader list, it might work out quite okay for you to take maybe one of the guard units, Varangian guard unit. They're about 87. Not many players would take 2 out. It's just too expensive. But you could take 1. But then, there's a big drop down. After you've taken that guard unit, it's all spear. So taking 5 of these veteran Muslim spearmen is fantastic. You get plus 50 on top of your standard spear advantage, the 100 for spear. You get 50 for quality. So there are about a 50 advantage against most infantry units. Swordsmen even more. So they are fantastic value for money. Let's see at 57. Does it make much of a difference? You're basically losing out on a regular foot because gone up 6. You've got 5 of them. So, players are still going to take this number out. But it is good that you've got, some sort of fairly unique units. I love unique units, and so we need more of these kind of units. Getting away from the very generic spear. So I'm happy that we've got them, and I just think that they're hard to face They're hard to face. The only disadvantage is they're protected. But a lot of the time, if you're playing against good players, you know, they'll be protecting their infantry, charging in with their light horse, skirmisher, cover. You might get a volley or two off, and then they're in action. It's hard to do much damage in a lot of battles with your skirmishers. You don't often get a chance. So overall, I think they are worthy units to include in the top 10, and I think at number 1 they also, it's a decent choice.